Fancy! Abba! Oh my god. Look at these crazy dogs. Jesus Christ. Good morning, team. Having technical difficulties. I can't tell if my iPad is charging or not. It's got this shit's blinking. I'm like, what the fuck? So Tom Nicholas made a video. You'll never guess what it was about. The fucking Ezra Klein shit. We're still talking about Ezra Klein and Ta-Nehisi Coates. What's interesting is that the conversation is still bearing fruit. It's kind of nice to see a conversation that's gone on this long. It's pretty surreal that it came from the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I mean, I woke up the next morning and recorded my video about it. Kind of like, what the fuck? Like, how are we all still having this conversation? Whatever. Oh, and also on the subject, Ryan Getty made a new video talking about consensus liberals, Ezra Klein, and going forward, I'm going to assume you've watched both of those videos because I don't think I can sum them up. They're pretty long and they're dense, so I'm going to read it out and then I'll explain it to you. Okay. Context collapse as the neo-fascist response to democratization of access to information. Back in the day, before the internet, you're on the newspaper, okay? So the fascists, the people who want to control people using the news media, all they have to do is print some stories that sound right. You know, you put the right story in the right tabloid, the right story in the right newspaper, and, you know, you only have so many people reading the newspaper, and then they will talk about the news and reach a consensus with people who haven't read it. For anybody who didn't read the news, there was a context of information provided by other people who did. Okay? And that information, it might be biased or whatever, you know, it might be good or bad, same as today, but it was much more limited, and so the context was much more controlled. And now with the internet, you have unlimited information, and like Tom Nicholas said, on a platform like Twitter, your posts are no different from the posts of the fucking vice president. Same platform, same font, same styling, same character count, everything's the exact same. And so, there is no context. You're not hearing about something from somebody, you're reading about it on Twitter. You just clicked on the video and I started talking to you. I could be lying to you, and you could be susceptible to that. Or I could be telling the truth and you could think I'm lying. Or anything like that. There's no context, so it's up to you to define your worldview. Alright? Okay, so y'all know Plato's allegory of the cave, right? There's these people, they can't look anywhere, they just see a shadow show on the wall, okay? And that's all they know. They think the world is two-dimensional, or you know. I'm not going to go over this shit again, because I assume you already know about the allegory of the cave. If you don't, you should look it up. It's not something you would know coming out of the womb, but it is something that, at least I learned very early on, as just a thought experiment. So I think of the internet as us, you know, leaving the cave. There is just an infinite amount of shadow shows, and you choose the one that resonates with you. Because the truth is subjective. I feel like there's a way I could try to sell that idea to you, but honestly, it's not what this video is even about. I mean, I just think the metaphor works. Like, in the cave, you obviously have the context of everybody's watching the one puppet show. You leave the cave, and the context collapses, and everybody's watching their own puppet show. But that doesn't change the fact that everybody's watching a fucking puppet show. We're all just choosing what to believe based on what we see. And that is what Plato is saying. Okay. Now let's talk about what this video is actually about. How do you achieve world peace? I'm serious. How do you do it? How do you do it? I've got some ideas. Got some ideas that I'd like to share with you. And this is serious. I am being serious. I've got some ideas I'd like to share with you. Okay, two things we gotta understand. First off, war is a cycle of revenge. It can only be ended with forgiveness and atonement throughout the body of society. Another thing, war is also a political game with a political solution. Those are two things that I believe. If you disagree or take issue with any of that, leave a comment, please. I'd like to hear what you have to say about war. If you think that there is such a thing as war that is not revenge, or if you think there's war that is not a political game, point it out, I guess. Let me support those statements, though. I think war is inherently political because you're talking about organizing people and fighting each other. That is like literally politics. You can't have a war without a leader. That's politics, baby. And there is a political solution to that. War is a cycle of revenge. That's just fucking true. We can say like, oh, it's so much more complicated than that. But I can also look at you and I can say, I love my neighbor as myself. I do unto others as I would have them do unto me. It's not complicated. It's just true. If we don't think about what we actually want for the world, then how are we going to do anything for it? That's kind of where I'm coming from. You know, I asked my brother, does he think world peace is possible? He said, well, it better be. And he's right. Yeah, it better fucking be. I mean, otherwise, what's the point? I mean, should we just all be evil? Like, if war is inevitable, then we should just start looting. For as long as you and I agree to be kind to each other, we have to fight for a peaceful future. So, revenge comes from zero-sum competitive thinking. The people who think we had to bomb Iran earlier this year because they were gonna get nukes or something, it's like, they just think that if somebody else has something, then it's bad for us. I mean, I don't think it's a good thing for anybody to have nukes. That being said, I think cooperation is like multiple times better for society than competition. To illustrate this point, war costs money to destroy things, whereas it does cost money to build things, but you have those things after the fact. It's kind of like the future generations will be saving money because we built things for them to use in the name of peace. Whereas if we build things in the name of war, then the future generations will be wasting money in the name of war. We want to end war because it's wasteful and because we get more by working together. I mean, I am trying to talk about some complex moral dilemma, but I'm also talking about just the truthful fact that war is just wasteful and stupid from a logical game theory perspective. Oh, yes, but the point is we're necessarily going to be utopian in this video. If that's something that bothers you, I mean, you probably shouldn't have clicked on a video about world peace. Like, I wasn't going to give you a step-by-step. Later in this video, when we discuss an actual structural solution to this, we're talking about this in, like, 100-year time spans. I'm not talking about something that'll happen in our lifetime necessarily. I mean, it'd be awesome if it did. But I'm talking about, you know, we need to be doing these things to prepare so that our kids can have good lives. The entirety of human history, we just want our kids to have better lives than us. Jesus Christ. Is this video stupid? Later in the video, when we discuss solutions, we're going to be talking about a world where we have a responsive government, where we have restored democracy, and we could talk about how to restore democracy in another video, but where we have, you know, rebalanced the economy already. You know, we can't have world peace until we have eradicated slavery. In fact, that's actually a really good reason why we should start working now. We have a lot of work to do. Like, we should be trying to solve the problems of today so that our kids can solve the problems of tomorrow. But I think there's a lot of people who are defeatist. There's a lot of people who are inherently zero-sum thinkers. Like, if somebody else has something, it's because we're missing out on that thing. Like, if Iran has nukes, it's because we're gonna lose our country. They're gonna nuke us. So, I believe firmly in the almost unlimited capacity of the human spirit. I'm going to define the human spirit for you. It is imagination, creativity, and ingenuity. So if you agree with that, the human spirit is almost unlimited, and that we should be anti-war for reasons that are self-evident, then we're on the same page. It's hard to, use our imagination to even imagine a world without war. Like, I mean, none of us can imagine the future accurately. You look at old sci-fi and it's like, how did they not know that cell phones were coming? I'm getting texts from Amazon right now. Can you believe that? But the first step to unlocking the human spirit is using imagination. So we need to imagine a world without war together. That's the only way that we can even start breaking ground on this issue, is by collectively imagining that, first of all, it'll be better if we don't have war, and second of all, it would be really cool if we didn't have war. We need to imagine it in our minds, and we each need to have our own worldview, because when humans get together with each their own ideas, they can use their creativity. The hardest thing is going to be creating a world without war, but that's why we're imagining it first. Lastly, ingenuity. We actually need to engineer a world without war, and we're going to talk about that later on in this video. The barrier to engineering a world without war is cooperation. How do we overcome that barrier is the question. How do we become a nation capable of cooperating with other nations in the name of peace? Well, I think first we have to solve other problems. We have to restore democracy, decide that climate change is an issue we want to engage with, and we have to take a actual stance against slavery.
Real quick, because I can't let the issue of slavery go. The 13th Amendment is an explicit protection of the practice of slavery in the Constitution. In America now, there are over 800,000 enslaved people. It is a practice that relies on violent, coercive means, and so it creates a violent, coercive society. And we have to end it. We have to end slavery in the process of solving our problems. It's not an ancillary issue that you can ignore. Oh, and there's going to be a slavery video on this channel 2 weeks from now. So check back in 2 weeks if you want to hear me screaming and crying about it.
We need to deal with our internal issues, okay? Because we need to find inner heaven before we can find outer heaven. Because if you try to create outer heaven without inner heaven first, then all you get is revenge. You should watch Metal Gear Lore Keeper. I've got a video on screen. We have to solve other problems. I've actually laid out in my video, Becoming a Lion, or it's called what is monetary socialism? Example of kind of what I'm imagining is going to solve a lot of our problems. I mean, the only thing that can solve our problems is people, because when we talk about politics, everything is socially constructed. Everything exists between people in our imagination. Politics is a product of the human spirit, and if we don't engage with it in that way, then we're gonna get lost like that. I mean, and that's why we haven't had peace yet, is because revenge is also part of the human spirit. And so there is this long-term war within humanity over whether to be vengeful or whether to be forgiving. And as a Christian, the answer is obvious. Love thy neighbor. It's the only thing you got to do to get into heaven is love thy neighbor. And that's why it's such a shame to see, first of all, Christians being misled. But yeah, I mean, that's what I like to talk about, is how do we solve our problems. And I think war is a good problem to look at, because almost every other issue that we have as a society feeds into war. War, again, is a product of revenge, which is a product of zero-sum competitive thinking, which is a product of the fact that all of us are born into a society where we are forced to compete just to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're born into this society where we have to fight for basic resources, and so naturally the government, which is a product of the collective human spirit, is also fighting for basic resources, right? Doesn't that... What was that? Hello?
Houston Spangler?
Yeah?
Jeff Bezos died yesterday.
What?
He was squished to death by a ginormous package on his delivery route.
Oh, damn. I'll miss him. He always gave me 3 days off a week.
That reminds me, you're on the schedule for Saturday. No slacking during the holiday season.
Well, that makes sense. Somebody's got to cover his route.
Was that a joke?
You want to see my notes? This is what this fucking page looks like. It's like got scribbles all over it. So that's what I'm trying to decode. All right. So let's talk about the ideas of peace that were coming up after World War II. This is, I know, so disorganized. If you want a historical understanding of it, you should try to read some fucking books, idiot. That was rude. I'm sorry. Let me actually recommend you a book. Oh, well, you should read The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. You should read that right now. Turn this video off and read The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. The disillusionment that oppressed people have when looking at the so-called success of so-called liberal, so-called democracies and being like, well, yeah, except I'm black and I'm not being treated equally. And it's not just about treatment, but it's also just, I'm literally still a second-class citizen. It's not just how I'm treated, but it's how I have to live my life as a second-class citizen. And he talks about forgiveness and revenge and the kind of things that got me. The other book you should read is called Franklin D. Roosevelt by Robert Dallek. It is a biography of Franklin D. Roosevelt. That's a really important time in American history, not just because of the Great Depression, the New Deal, and World War II, but also because it was the beginning of the expansion of executive power. So like the bad stuff we're seeing Trump doing and that we saw Reagan and Nixon and all the modern presidents doing, it is kind of enabled by FDR doing necessary evils. And so you kind of, the book I recommended is kind of glazing him, I'll admit it. Anyways, to our point, FDR entered the war. We signed a treaty with Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of motherfucking Britain. That treaty was basically like, okay, after the war, we are going to work together. We're going to stop, like, having these silly fucking wars. We're going to rebuild some shit. We are going to, stop having wars and killing people and doing, like, stupid shit. Okay?
Humans are naturally industrious. They're going to either build things or wage war. And the Atlantic Charter was a commitment to build, which makes it equally a commitment to peace. It's an important thing to keep in mind.
And that was at the beginning of the Lend-Lease Act. So it was before the United States was fighting in the war, but it was but we were supplying Britain with materials, right? We used that power of the deal to get them to agree that we were going to be done with war after the fact. And after the fact, we were going to work together. We were going to be at least pro-self-governance. And I know a lot of people like to glaze FDR. I was one of those people. I'm not anymore. But I think it's important that we acknowledge, even when we say like, oh, America's never been peaceful. America sucks. Like, even when we talk about all that, I want you to understand this was America before the CIA. The FBI had only been around for a couple decades. But it's important to look, before we even entered World War II, it's important to look at these moments right on the edge where we said we will have this war in the name of peace. Look at what came of that. I'm going fast. Read your fucking history. This is my emotional and understanding of events. The source cited here, I know I told you those books, but I read those books a while ago. This is source cited, my own head. Now, let's talk about what happened after the war. So you get the UN, the League of Nations, the IMF, World Trade Organization, and NATO, and other international like cooperations. And so that's the thing. That's the thing. I guess I won't bury the lead anymore. The political solution to the political problem of war is international cooperation. It's not that fucking hard. The opposite of war is working together. It's not nobody talks to each other and nobody works together. Nobody knows anything and we all just kind of work in secret. No, the opposite of war is working together to build a better society. And that is what we should all want. Anyways, call me a bleeding heart liberal all you want. I don't really care. I would like world peace, and you should too. Jesus fucking Christ. We look at those groups I listed. There's 3 pillars I want to identify. You might identify different ones. Put it in the comments. Tell me what you think. Trade, finance, and war. That's what those groups are for, okay? So it was a pooling of military resources. It was to coordinate trade, and it was to get the finance people on the same page so that they wouldn't try to incentivize war with each other. The reason trade and finance are different is because they're different. What's the difference between trade and finance? Trade is industrial. So like before you had the UN, it was like the European Coal Community or something like that, where they basically, all the industries needed international cooperation from their own governments. So that's what they demanded. They got a coal community. Like they needed some economic planning, right? That's what the trade is for. Ideas of like globalized trade, specialization. Specialization is an important thing to remember. If you know about the tariff talk that's been going on with Donald Trump, you might have been hearing about specialization. We're going to talk about specialization in a minute. We got a snapshot of the United States before entering World War II. We said we're going to do peace. We're going to allow these colonies to be self-governing, and like we're going to make sure everybody agrees before we go into the war. And then we go into the war, we fight the war, and we come out, and there's these international groups, okay? Cutting edge. First time this shit was ever attempted to get countries on the same line, to get countries to agree on peace. Excuse me. If anybody threatens that peace, we'll go to war. And I don't want to discount that. You had peace in the First World. Now the issue is moving forward. You have international cooperation. It's supposed to end war, right? So you have peace. Now we're talking about the Cold War era. We know it wasn't peaceful. I mean, the United States is fighting all these fucking proxy wars. And everybody is helping them because war is profitable. Canada's working with us. They're just sending soldiers over there, getting their money. The British is helping us. We're fighting these fucking proxy wars against Russia. We're just doing it. I'm not going to go into all the secret wars the United States fought or all the proxy wars the United States fought. I don't know all of them. I'm not a fucking genius. This video is a little bit eclectic. Jesus Christ, you should know by now I'm not a video essayist. I'm a guy who yells at a camera. Finance? What do I need to say about finance? It's already corrupt. It's the finance community that creates a military-industrial complex. The Senate was bought into not going for the League of Nations, which would have made the United States more peaceful. The Senate, if I'm making allegations, the Senate was probably bought by the military-industrial complex, even at that time. Either way, we know today that the finance sector is one of the things that buys our politicians and keeps them from solving our real problems and keeps us from having world peace. So we have these organizations, the UN, the EU, the League of Nations, all that shit, the World Trade Organization. We have these organizations that are meant to coordinate the financial world in a way that is conducive to world peace. But in the process of coordinating the financial world, they actually just gave the financial world so much power that they can have wars and call them peace. Okay? Does that make sense? If it doesn't, read a fucking book about it. There's one more thing with finance I wanted to talk about, and that is the gold standard. At the end of World War II, one of the things that we did, where the IMF and the World Bank Group were set up, is the Bretton Woods Conference. You should know what the Bretton Woods Conference is. If you don't know what it is, then that's because they don't want you to know. So before Bretton Woods, each individual country was on the gold standard, and then Basically, two things caused kind of a crisis in the years preceding World War II, which was, first of all, the French government was stockpiling gold for some reason. I can't exactly remember why. Read a book about it. The other thing is that during the war, the Germans were stockpiling gold, and the Americans got to Germany first, and we stole all the Nazi gold. That's really something that happened. If you talk to conspiracy theorists, they'll tell you about the Nazi gold. And you should listen. Not to everything they say, but you should really listen about the Nazi gold. Because we took that gold, and what we did at the end of World War II is in the United States, we were like, look, guys, we've got all the gold. How about instead of backing your currencies with gold, you back your currencies with US dollars, and we'll back US dollars with gold. I don't know. That shit should just scare you because it means that the United States has the only currency. Every currency is just referenced against the dollar, and the dollar is referenced against gold. That sounds like the gold standard with extra steps that put the United States in the absolute seat of global trade and finance. Oh, great. The United States is the home of the military-industrial complex. This doesn't sound like a conflict of interest at all. Okay. Basically, the Bretton Woods system was not good. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. We know this. Even though the United States entered World War II wanting peace, we came out of World War II in an extremely powerful position. We dropped nukes, and our currency was the global reserve currency. And, in fact, it still is the global reserve currency. That's why this runaway inflation, this recession that's coming with the AI bubble is really scary. So wait, you may have heard from my videos, or you just know that we left the gold standard in 1971. Now, if you watch my videos, then you know that we replaced the gold standard with the petroleum dollar. So there's two currencies. The US dollar is a fiat currency. It inflates every day. And then the US dollar is constantly referenced against the price of petroleum, which we force petroleum exporting nations to buy and sell petroleum only using the United States dollar, which basically, so we leave the gold standard, but the US dollar is still the global reserve currency, and we use colonialism and like we just own the oil fields, and that is what keeps the United States dollar relevant. Now, with this runaway inflation, this AI bubble, I talked about it in my Amazon Breaks video. It's the segment where I'm driving in my own car. It's about why we're entering a recession. I had to cut it because I started just talking about petroleum, and finance is corrupt because you had the Bretton Woods system, later the petroleum dollar. Does that make sense? Trade. We want the international organizations to coordinate trade. That is going to lead to peace because nobody's going to be fighting over who can trade with what. You just have an international referee who's like, yeah, you can do this, no, you can't do that. And everybody just listens to them instead of fighting wars about it. That's the idea. However, the international community protects capital. And we can see this in specialization. What's China good at? Oh, their manufacturing is really good. This is really good. That's why their economy is so good. Oh, can you say the quiet part out fucking loud? It's sweatshop labor. That's what China has, okay? So we're protecting trade. In my opinion, if we're going to have an international consensus on trade, it has to be anti-slavery. I mean, just saying. I mean, if we want peace, we have to not have slaves because slavery is inherently unpeaceful. It relies on violent, coercive means. I mean, period. End of story. Oh, yeah, and what are poor countries good for? Oh, just resources. We'll go in there and mine the stuff. Never mind the fact that we'll use slaves to do it. Never mind the fact that it's not our land and it's other people's land and they don't want us there. If they try to nationalize their oil fields, we'll just have the CIA go in and organize a coup. Okay? So that's I think I've explained how So we've got our three pillars: trade, finance, and war, the three pillars of international cooperation. I've explained how the post-World War II system of international cooperation saw each of these three pillars become corrupted in a way that was not conducive to peace. It was good for the nations that were involved in the international cooperation, typically good for them, but it was bad for everybody else, and that leads to the cycle of revenge. Cycle of revenge. Russians are going to be funding those poorer countries to help them get their freedom, but also to help them become communist. And so we're going to fight them. And in the process of fighting them, we make money off of it. Fast forward 100 years, Donald Trump is the president. Here we are. Shit is getting worse. I think that's a pretty good assessment of the New World Order post-World War II up to today, where we're entering a new World Order. Now, let's use the 4 apocalypses to explain how international cooperation has failed in the past. We should have had peace already. We can all agree on that. We entered World War II. America entered World War II with the goal of global peace by the end of World War II. It was supposed to be the war that ends all wars. We've forgotten that because it's been so long and we've had so many wars since then. But World War II was supposed to be the last war ever in the history of humanity. The people fighting it agreed with that. The soldiers gave their life for peace. And every day that we allow fighting to continue on this earth is a dishonor to their memory and the memory of every soldier who's ever died or been wounded or been disrespected by the government. We should not have slavery. If we have an international cooperation, this whole group of people agreeing on what's right and what's wrong and all this, we should all agree no slavery. And that includes sweatshop labor, and that includes United States prison slavery, and that includes the fucking lithium mines, where there's the actual chattel slavery still to this day. We should not have slavery. Okay, I'm sorry. If we're going to have anti-war international cooperation, we should not have slavery. Here's one that should resonate with y'all, because I know most of us haven't fought in a war, and most of us are not enslaved. This is the one that's relevant to you. We should have a massive middle and upper class and no poverty by now. We should. The fact that you're like, am I in the middle class? Am I safe? Am I above the poverty line? Am I going to be above the poverty line by the time I have kids? The fact that you even worry about those things is the failure of the system of international cooperation established in the world order after World War II. I mean, the soldiers didn't fight for you to be middle class, but god damn it, the soldiers fought for a better world. Okay? And the fact that we still have poverty in the year 2025 is ridiculous. It's just not fair. I mean, come on. Oh yeah. Last apocalypse. This one's kind of a cop-out, but it's also true. We should be able to face climate change and get over it. Shouldn't we? Shouldn't we be able to transition smoothly and easily to renewable resources? Shouldn't we not be still fighting wars over petroleum? Shouldn't we just not be expanding our petroleum production? Yeah. And we need international cooperation in order to do that. And the reason we need international cooperation in order to deal with climate change is because every currency is backed by the United States dollar, and the United States dollar is backed by oil. That's why all the elite, all these people, that's why they are either denying climate change or working for, like trying to expand oil production or whatever it is. It's because the entire economic system of the whole globe is based on petroleum. And we need international cooperation. The United States needs help to deal with the fact that we chose to be responsible. We chose to be the global reserve currency. We chose to be the fucking United States, leaders of the free world. And we chose the petroleum dollar too. And we need to choose a new New commodity to back the dollar. Put in the comments your favorite commodity to back the dollar when we get rid of oil. I'll tell you my favorite commodity, labor. The labor hour. That can replace barrels of oil, as far as I'm concerned. So I've talked about the failures. I've basically been a scavenger this whole time, talking about the failures of international cooperation and the New World Order. So let's talk about the next thing. How can we solve war? How can humans get together and stop killing each other forever? I don't expect an end to violent crime ever. I think it's not innately human, but I think it's kind of just a byproduct of society, violent crime. There's ways to fight it, but international cooperation isn't going to stop violent crime. No, international cooperation can actually stop war. Well, so I think it's safe to say we need an international group that can solve the problems that are too big for any one nation to solve. We need an American international cooperation. I'm saying a Republic of Nations. I have to film the second half of this video, how to make world peace. The first half is just me complaining about the times that we tried.
When have we tried?
After World War II. And then they decided, actually we'll serialize this. We'll make them wait for the sequel.
Just you wait.
Yeah, but
bigger, better, badder.
More autonomous. It basically, war happens automatically.
Hey, war's hell.
War's hell. War never changes. It actually could change. We can make it stop. What if we all agreed no? After World War II, you get the first phase of international cooperation. The League of Nations was founded in 1919. American President Woodrow Wilson put it forward and got it into the ideas of the international community. And then the Senate would not ratify the Treaty of Versailles unless the United States did not join the League of Nations. So that's why the United States has never been part of a national cooperation group. But what's interesting, the EU has been talking for years about creating a European army instead of having each country has its own military, which I think this top of the page, war is a cycle of revenge. So you can't stop a war by starting a war. You can't create peace by conquering.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to accept people into the peace that you've already created. We just need a way for the United States to not be obligated to keep these military contractors propped up.
Yeah.
1/3 of our GDP is government spending.
Hey everyone, this number 1/3 of GDP comes from government spending. You can find it at this link, which is information put out by the IMF, which is one of the international organizations that was established soon after World War II. So that's kind of topical, interesting. Check out this link.
1/3 of our GDP is the government gives money to corporations. Not to us, but to corporations. 1/3 of our GDP. And most of that is going to fossil fuel companies and military industrial companies. We need Denmark, Canada, America, Mexico to just form a North American organization. And that way we can kind of spread our military budget out across a few nations. And that way, when we start to demilitarize, it doesn't just happen in one place, but it can happen in multiple places at once.
Yeah.
It can happen real slowly, not like we're giving up so much, but just more so America doesn't have to pay as much to our military contractors, and the other places get, the best military protection in the world. And then anybody who wants to join and pool your military resources and commit to demilitarizing. What we need to do is melt down all the guns. It's not possible to end conflict, but it's possible to end war.
I don't even know about that.
Time is infinite. After a long period of demilitarization, and now I'm not saying in our lifetimes, imagine a generation of truly compassionate people. I really do think
the Star Trek world. You get that version of the future.
Is it possible to raise a generation of people during peacetime who will be good without knowing why? Is it possible to raise a generation of people who are anti-Nazis who didn't have to fight the Nazis? And what we're seeing today is like, no, I mean, there's Nazis in America. And it's like, people like us are going to rise up and want to not be Nazis. But then what about our kids? They might learn from us. What about their kids?
Yeah.
You know, it has to be a religion, not like a theology where we talk about God and good and evil, but where we just say like there is a force of good, which is accepting other people as they are and trying to help. And there is a kind of evil, which is, this is in the Bible, selfishness, greed, gluttony, trying to take more for yourself, trying to take more when other people don't have enough is evil. You have the Catholic Church. They're not like actually preaching the true word of God. They're preaching, give us money. Let's check on the beef.
So this entire video has been incredibly theoretical, obviously, but the next parts of this video, it's really just me kind of riffing. Like, I'm making this YouTube video because there's nothing like better to do. I'm bored and I'm interested in this and I want to start a conversation. So, you know, leave a comment. I don't want to negate what comes next in this video by qualifying it, but I also don't want anybody watching this to think like, you know, I'm not saying that if I was king of the world, everything would be great. Does that make sense? You'll watch. Or you won't. Click off the fucking video. I don't care. We will need to create a system of international cooperation that requires us, our nation, the United States, to give up some control. This is the reason that it hasn't happened yet. Our nation is ruled by powerful elites who use the control that they have to subjugate other people. Giving up that control, while it would benefit the people at large, it would be damaging to the people who are in control, which is why we must first solve other problems that we have, like the relatively small amount of democracy. When we talk about implementing this system of international cooperation, we're talking about a United States after we have implemented things like ranked choice voting, algorithmic redistricting with local zoning boards, after we've eradicated the two-party system, after we have done substantial work limiting the power of the deep state, after we have created constitutional limitations on what police officers are able to do, and established term limits for Supreme Court justices. Like, what I'm saying is there's a lot of reforms that we need to make before we will even be capable of creating a world that is capable of peace.
At that time, 10, 50, 100 years in the future, our kids may trust the government more than we could even conceive of, right? This is what happens in socialist nations where the taxes are higher, but they actually do more stuff with them, like for the people. The people actually don't mind paying the taxes. The people actually like the government. So as Americans, it's hard for us to comprehend, but there may be a future where a system of international cooperation that supersedes our own national authority actually makes sense, not just for like a small subset of theorists, but actually for a large group of people in the population who recognize one major issue with the way that our country is structured, which is our biggest expense is military spending. Now, how much of that can we save by doing things like dismantling the CIA and the FBI and you know, changing the way that we employ police officers? Probably quite a bit, but we are always going to have the largest military budget on Earth, except maybe, China's trying to beat us out at that right now, which is great news. Yay. The thing is, the problem with scaling down the military is that if you do it too quickly or in one single location, then you just have tanks and guns that need to be auctioned off. We have to depressurize. Otherwise, there will be a military power vacuum. But there is this insurmountable issue, which is if we ever want to spend money building high-speed rail, we're going to need to free up a substantial amount of space in the budget, which means we are going to need to cut our spending on the military substantially. So, my proposal for an international cooperation goes like this. I'm not here to say how it would happen. I'm here to imagine. Before we can collectively create, we must individually imagine. I'm imagining a system where United States, Canada, Denmark, who owns Greenland, and Mexico form a North American Treaty Organization. Sorry that the acronym is NATO. This organization will slowly but surely, with a spelled out goal, pool all of the military. All the military of all of those nations combined into one military force, controlled democratically by each nation. All of those nations take on that budget. It would basically mean nobody would fuck with any of those nations. We could combine this with some kind of aid, because the cartel issue, if we're gonna have like a war on terror with the Mexican drug cartels, then we need international cooperation for that. We also need to decriminalize those drugs to deflate that power vacuum, but that's a whole, this is what I'm talking about. The issues are combined into one, they interlap, they overlap, and we're not going to be able to solve them unless we can cooperate. So, America, in this situation, would have its military budget spread across those nations, who each would take a part of that burden. And in exchange, they each would have equal protection under the combined might of all of the militaries of all of the nations involved. Now, at that point, you have spread out military assets across such a large area that you can start with the cooperation of those member nations diminishing the military budget. I think for something like this to work, it would also need trade and finance agreements that would be advantageous to the other nations, because the thing I'm describing would really free up a lot of space in the United States military budget, and it would make the other nations end up paying a lot. So there would need to be some way of figuring that out. But again, I'm talking about something that happens after we have amended the 13th Amendment. So it's like, I'm not even going to go into trying to iron out a peace deal. Like, I'm just a guy in my room. This deal, it's possible by the will of the people. It will happen if we all decide to care. As long as we decide to actually deal with the problems that we have, then we will deal with it in some way, shape, or form. It might not be the way that I'm imagining, but now that I've put my idea forward, you might modify it a little bit in your own imagination. And one day, when it comes time to actually create the peace that we're talking about, somebody will be able to take the collective imagination of the people and turn it into a creation. It's possible, as long as you care. And as long as you teach your children to care. So I've stated, I think the only way to actually demilitarize over a period of time is, like I said, spreading military assets across multiple nations and then slowly demilitarizing that way. And we need to bring people into the peace. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, once we have this system of international military cooperation, we can just add other European nations. That's why the inclusion of Denmark is so important. First of all, Donald Trump keeps talking about invading Greenland, or at least he was. I do believe that's something that is on the minds of people in the Trump administration. I'm not sure if it's going to happen sooner or later, but entering into a cooperation with Greenland where our military is managed by people who just care about peace and justice and also are intelligent military strategists from all over the world. That is going to make it so that the United States cannot just order its military to invade Greenland. What we have to do, though, is actually give up control of our military to an organization. I mean, an organization staffed largely by Americans, funded largely by Americans. I'm not saying we give our military away. I'm saying we donate our military to the ideal of peace that we construct with other nations collectively. But yeah, then we couldn't just order our military to invade Greenland. I'm hoping our children are smart and are not afraid of peace and are not afraid to care for one another. Because that's the thing is if our children love their neighbor, then it will be a no-brainer. We will want to cast our weapons aside, which is why our role in this is to imagine the future and raise children who love their neighbors. And that's all we can do, is try our best to do better for our kids. And so we've been like stuck in this cycle where we talk about war like it's inevitable. And I mean, if we raise our children to believe that war is inevitable, then obviously war is inevitable because everybody's teaching their children the same fucking thing. I don't want to act like I've figured it out. Like I say, I'm imagining something. If you accept my premise that the opposite of war is cooperation, then the only way to end war globally is cooperation globally. A lot of people are scared of giving up the nation, but I think on a timeline of human events, either we all die from getting nuked, or, I mean, y'all know or maybe you don't know. So if we don't establish an international cooperation dedicated to demilitarization in some way, not the exact way I'm describing, but in some way, if we do not address a war and make it stop forever, what I think is going to happen is basically Americans, Chinese, and Russians are going to unite their military force and do a genocide of the southern hemisphere of the globe. Like, they're going to kill all the black Africans and all the South Americans as soon as they no longer need that labor supply. The way I see it, that's where things are headed. So it's kind of like, do you want that or do you want war to end forever? And for me, those are the only two options, is we either accept the apocalypse or we fight against it. Of course, the war apocalypse might come about in some other way. For example, we might give AI all the nukes and we get the Terminator future. I think that is more than likely as long as we have nukes around and AI around. It's very, very possible that a military as well funded as the United States will just coup the government. In fact, some people think it already happened. You remember when they killed John F. Kennedy? That was the CIA. So yeah, I'm suggesting an unprecedented level of international trust. But, I mean, it's either that or an unprecedented level of destruction. And if you're not rich, then you will be destroyed. I know what I'm saying is extreme, but there's Nazis in the fucking government. I mean, Appa.
All it would take is for you to care. All it takes is for you to care. All we need is for you to care. All we need is for you to care. You just need to start caring. That's it. All you need to do is care.
I'm crazy. Yeah, I think the video's pretty much over now. I mean, I really appreciate you guys. I mean it. I do. I'm releasing 2 companion videos for this one. The first one's going to be on the labor dollar, which I mentioned briefly earlier in this video. And the next one's going to be on slavery, which I already told you about earlier in this video. So, subscribe. Leave a comment if anything I said made you think about something. I'm sorry if I sounded stupid at any point. It's only because I'm making the shit up on the spot. This video took a long time to put together, actually. But it was a lot of fun. And thanks for watching. I really mean it. Love you guys. Bye.
So much effort. War is going to take so long. We're never going to do it we're never going to end war in our lifetime, are we? Yeah, probably not, to tell you the truth. We're probably not going to end war in our lifetime. That being said, I just want you to think about it. There's this horrible thing happening, and theoretically, in theory, you and I could stop it. All it would take is for us to get elected to Senate and vote against it. Right? And so you're going to be like, oh, war will never end. That's what you're going to say to me? I mean, no. I'm sorry, but instead, how about you run for Senate in your district? Oh, great, the Senate spot is sympathetic to our cause. How about you run for a fucking House seat in your district, bro? Why don't you fucking man up and write a fucking bill that says, yeah, we're not going to spend on the military anymore. And then you can tell me how war is always going to happen. War is inevitable. War is part of the human condition. No, let me tell you something. Because you don't know a fucking thing. War is not a part of the human condition. The human condition is serving our Lord, God. The human condition is to take care of his garden. The human condition is hunting and gathering. The human condition is not warfare. No, warfare is a trick from the fucking devil, okay? Listen to me. Your body is a vehicle, okay? Now Satan is trying to pimp the ride, okay? And when Satan pimps the ride, he's going to convince you that war is inevitable and good for the economy, and you should vote for it, okay? Satan convinced a lot of people in the older generations to think like that, okay? Satan is literally invading our society. And you're going to sit here and be like, I don't know, I think war is going to last forever. Like, war is probably part of the human condition. No, bro. The human condition is picking berries, killing deer, and giving thanks to our Lord. That's the human condition, bro. So shut the fuck up about war. You think politics is a natural thing? It's not a natural thing. Politics is something that happens in our heads.
Yeah, and I mean, come on. Think about World War II. Like, that was so cool, wasn't it? World War II was awesome, and Hitler was evil, but in a way that is kind of attractive to me. So that's you. You're the basic liberal born in 1948. When you look at war, you listen to the official story because you were 8 when President Eisenhower gave you that speech. Listen. Google search
President Eisenhower military-industrial complex speech.
Do you know who Smedley Butler is? Do you even know who Smedley Butler is? And you're coming into this conversation looking at me for the burden of proof. You're looking at me for the burden of proof. Do you know who Smedley Butler is? I mean, no, you fucking don't. Because you either agree with me or you don't know who Smedley Butler is. No, bitch. You don't know who Smedley Butler was. You don't even know about President Eisenhower's 1958 speech about the new military-industrial complex. I look crazy. I look insane.